And I would like to call upon the Ontario Real Estate Association to come and join us. Welcome. And for the record, if you could please introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow committee members. Thank you for allowing us to present Bill 36, the Cannabis Statute Law Amendment Act 2018. My name is Steve Kotan. I'm a realtor from North Bay, and I'm a director on the Ontario Real Estate Association. Joining me today is Matthew Thornton, OREA's Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications. By way of background, OREA is one of Canada's largest provincial trade associations with 70,000 real estate brokers and salespeople who are members of Ontario's 38 real estate boards. While OREA does not officially have a position on the legalization of cannabis, our member and tens of thousands of clients they serve every year care about safe communities. With that in mind, we are encouraged by the government's efforts with Bill 36 to safeguard young people, combat the criminal market, and provide safer ways to buy recreational cannabis legally. One area, however, where we are looking for provincial leadership is the issue of cultivation of cannabis in residential properties. As this committee knows, the decision to legalize cannabis was made by the federal government, and it is now up to each province to pass enabling legislation. One topic that the federal government left to the discretion of each province is home cultivation of cannabis and the number of plants permitted within a dwelling. Make no bones about it, after October 17th, more Ontarians will be growing legal pot at home. Consider, for example, Denver, Colorado, where only a few years ago, cannabis was legalized in that state. Metro Denver police estimate that 1 in every 10 homes in that city has cannabis being grown in it. Not to mention the thousands of Ontarians who have medical prescriptions to grow cannabis in their home. Often these prescriptions exceed the 4-plant rule, creating sizable grow-ops in homes that were never built to house them safely. And that's just legal grow operations. Crime syndicates often use residential buildings to grow marijuana, causing significant structural damage to the property. Every year, law enforcement busts hundreds of grow operations across the province, many of them in middle-class Ontario neighborhoods. Despite the province's best efforts, we are concerned that organized crime will continue to have a large role in the illicit cannabis market. Proposed federal rules permit up to 4 plants of unlimited height to be grown in any Ontario home. Former cannabis grow operations, even on a small scale, can pose significant health and safety issues for unsuspected home buyers. These risks are often masked by owners of existing grow operations when the property is sold, making it difficult for home buyers and realtors to detect. Problems like mold and fungus. Growing cannabis indoors requires high temperatures and high humidity, which can lead to the formation of black mold and other types of funguses, which are particularly problematic for seniors and young children with breathing issues. The National Collaborating Center of Environmental Health recently published a report which outlined specific concerns with accidental poisoning, indoor air quality, and the inappropriate use of pesticides in home cannabis grow-ops. Unlike the commercial production of cannabis, there are almost no regulations for safe production of home-cultivated cannabis. Even if there are regulations, there is no guarantee that they will be followed. With an increase of cannabis plants in homes, there is also a greater risk of accidental poisoning in youth, pets, and adults who may inadvertently consume cannabis. But what about home buyers? Stopping unsuspected home buyers from entering into a potential nightmare scenario whereby their family is faced with these health and safety issues is at the root of our call for action today. These examples rarely make the news because homeowners are deeply concerned about the stigma associated with former grow operations and the impact that a stigma will have on the investment of their family home. For those who argue that legal cannabis plants should be treated no differently than any other plant grown in a home, let me be clear. These are not tomato plants. They are controlled substances They can severely impact people's health, and growers typically use more water, electricity, heat, pesticides, and humidity in the cultivation of cannabis than other garden variety plants. A recent article in the Windsor Star found that because the federal legislation has no restrictions on height or width of a homegrown cannabis plant, an experienced grower can cultivate 4 pounds of cannabis with one plant. That's 60 times the personal possession limit. These plants look more like small trees than they do your home herb garden. Experts in the medical, law enforcement, and real estate sector have spoken against the personal cultivation of plants in homes and have recommended a ban on home cultivation. In particular, the Canadian Medical Association has noted concerns with high humidity and temperatures and the use of hazardous chemicals such as pesticides. Canada's police chiefs have also raised concerns about the production and manipulation of plants and the possession of illicit cannabis. The chiefs of police, in a written statement to the Federal Standing Committee on Health, also noted that personal cultivation was, quote, counter to the bill's stated objective of protecting youth, end quote. Every day I work with Ontarians who have spent years saving up for a home where they can raise their families. These people consider every detail of their purchase, the number of bedrooms, the size of the yard, the condition of the electrical plumbing and the windows. They want to know exactly what they're buying with their hard-earned money, and that they deserve to know. As a realtor, it's unsettling not always being able to inform buyers if their home that they're considering was once a marijuana grow-up. If a realtor knows that the home they are showing was once a marijuana grow-up, they are obliged to inform their buyers. However, a realtor can't always tell, nor can home inspectors always detect the signs of a former marijuana grow-up. To protect buyers against illegal and legal grow-ops, we're recommending that, first, the province should follow Manitoba and Quebec's lead and ban home cannabis cultivation. A ban on cannabis cultivation would not only protect the home buyers, it would reduce the size of illicit cannabis market and encourage more people into provincially licensed retailers. Exemptions, however, should be made for the medical license holders. While some have argued that such a ban could be subject to a court challenge based on federal supremacy of law, OREA notes that the federal legislation already gives provincial discretionary powers over limitations on the number of plants in a home. We believe that if challenged, this power could stand up in court. If the province does not move forward with the ban, OREA has a 3-point plan to help protect Ontario homeowners. First, the province should create a registry of former illegal grow-ops using the land title system. This registry would provide homeowners a mechanism to check and see if their potential dream home was a former grow-op and whether or not it has been remediated. Second, with home growth expected to increase significantly after legalization, the province should require that all licensed home inspectors receive training on how to spot the signs of a former grow-up. And finally, because the risks of mold and humidity are magnified in a smaller space, we recommend that in multi-unit residential buildings, like condos, that the province reduce the number of plants permitted to be grown from 4 to 1 for units 1,000 square feet or smaller. In conclusion, while the province has rightly focused its initial efforts on getting the sale and distribution of cannabis right, today we're calling on policymakers to turn their attention to protecting Ontario homeowners and protecting prospective home buyers. Ontario Realtors urge you amend Bill 36 and ban home cultivation. However, if the government does not ban cultivation, we recommend that you take steps to protect homeowners, namely reducing the number of plants permitted from 4 to 1 in units that are 1,000 square feet or smaller. Thank you very much for your time, and at this point, Matter, I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll begin with the opposition. Dolly Bacon.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's good to have you both here. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on the 3 points if, for example, there is no ban, as to how we can make sure that our children are safe at home, and the stigma that you're talking about? A lot of people who buy properties, they don't want to disclose that, and it's a real stigma that is attached to it in terms of selling property later on.
Yeah, definitely. So as I had mentioned, we do want this to be registered with the land title system. If it was registered on there, any realtor or prospective buyer can go and search title, and it will tell if it was a former grow-up or not, and if it has been remediated. If the property has been remediated, you know, there's different things that go along with that.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, the best way to protect kids in homes would be to ban cultivation in residential properties altogether. But with respect to the stigma issue, our registry proposal has sort of built into it a remediation standard that the province or the federal government would set so that homeowners could know that their property was remediated to a standard that would protect their health and safety, and that's important information for the next buyer as well. So it would address the stigma issue by sort of giving some certainty to both the existing homeowner and then prospective homeowners about the
Can I
what the
just
quality of
ask
the
you
home.
to please state your name for the
Sorry,
record?
Matthew
Thank you.
Thornton. I'm Vice President of Public Affairs at OREA. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think another thing that we've listened to a lot of different stakeholders today, and one was mental health issues, and in terms of educating our children, educating our parents. A lot of parents don't know how to have that conversation with their children. So what would be, OREA's kind of point of view in terms of the outside sale? So even, I don't think we can stop somebody from growing at home completely, unless what would you propose the government takes, what kind of actions, and in terms of educating our parents, what sort of ideas do you have or would you recommend?
That's a great question. It's a little bit outside of our bailiwick per se. As Steve mentioned off the top, we're encouraged by the direction of the federal legislation with respect to taking some steps to make our streets safe and protect youth and minimize the illicit cannabis market. We think that's a positive direction in general. But our main concern today is with the home cultivation of cannabis and what that means for homeowners in the province.
Thank you.
I had some questions around, speak for the chair.
Done? Go ahead, Sarah Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Just some questions, thank you both for the presentation, around fire regulations for those that are growing at home. Just very briefly, as I was going through the pamphlet, the book that you provided us, I noted that, those that are growing at home often do not follow, fire regulations, and are there any recommendations that you would make that would permit someone to grow at home, for example, while adhering to additional regulations that the government would impose?
Yeah, Steve discussed, sort of alluded to in his presentation, the idea that the province could create regulations around home cultivation. I think our broader concern would be whether or not those rules were followed at the end of the day. Compliance, I think, would be a really tough issue, as would enforcement. So for those reasons, our position is, banning cultivation would be the much easier solution. Let's push people towards those retail outlets instead of, growing at home. It would also minimize the illicit cannabis market. I think our concern is that the illegal cannabis market is going to continue to have a large space in Ontario, even post-legalization. And that has a lot of issues for residential properties, residential neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More questions? So I'll come to the government side. Lindsay Park.
Thank you for coming today, and we share your concern for taking care for property values and respecting properties in Ontario. Perhaps we have a different read of the federal legislation and whether a court challenge would be successful or not of it. I do note in June of 2018, and I know your organization released a public statement, challenging the federal government to be clear on this to the provinces. Absent that clarity coming from the federal government, I thank you for your 3-point plan. And I just wanted to know what the last status was of your discussions with the federal government, how they've been left on this important topic.
pass that over to
Sure.
you, Matt. Definitely.
So thank you very much for the question. The status is the federal government continues to believe that the 4-plant rule is a good rule, it's a good limit. That's despite the fact that Quebec and Manitoba have taken positions in favor of banning home cultivation. So I think with that in mind, that's why we're looking to the province for some leadership on the issue.
Thank you.
But, sorry, Sharif Sabawi?
In your presentation, you mentioned about linking the registry, land registry to the homes which have been growers before. We're talking about mass production. We're not talking about the 4 blends, because the 4 blends are going to be legal.
Legal, yep.
So I don't think that the 4 blend would be something the government will track, or you can even track. But saying that, what's your advice in regards to, like, would you create some home buyer guide in regards to discover even those 4 blends, or 4 blends are not gonna cause decrease in the price of the property?
So with respect to the 4-plant issue, the registry itself would only deal with illegal grow-ops. So those
Yes.
are illegal grow-ops that are busted by the police. Under the municipal act, there's a requirement in the legislation for the police to inform the municipality that they've busted the grow-up. Our registry proposal would mandate that the municipality would have to register on the title of the property that it was a former grow-up, and then any health and safety issues that a municipal inspector identified with that property. And those work orders couldn't be removed until the property was remediated. So they're sort of checking all the boxes when it comes to health and safety. We're definitely not suggesting that legal grow-ups be captured by that registry. In terms of your question about consumer education, I think that's definitely going to be a role for our members going forward, working with their clients to make sure that they know as much information as they can about cannabis and home cultivation and some of the issues that it has around the properties, and we're working on some of that information right now.
Thank you.
A question from Effie Trentopoulos.
I wanted to ask you about the ability that municipalities will have, as you know, to opt out of allowing stores to come into the community. Do you think the opt-out will actually encourage more people to grow in their homes, or discourage more people from growing in their homes? Have you considered that?
That's a good question. I don't know if we've considered it in a tremendous amount of detail. I do think it would be safe to assume that if your local municipality opted out of permitting licensed and you had to travel a far distance, you might have a larger incentive to consider growing in the home. So that's, I think, a safe assumption, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, joining us and presenting here
Thank you
today.
very much for your time.